Thank you for joining us. You're watching a career success video from Computer Coach. Computer Coach is a Tampa-based computer training center specializing in helping IT and business professionals add on the skills they need to reach their desired career goals. If you are job searching, in transition, or are looking for guidance, please feel free to reach out to us at www.computercoach.com. Now, let's get started.
Does this sound familiar? Your stomach's knotted. Your mind, which is usually percolating with ideas and to-dos, has gone blank. And your inner voice is hollering, just leave. You know this is going to be a colossal waste of time. So what's going on? Well, maybe you're standing face to face with someone who has no idea you're madly in love with them. Or maybe you're networking. I'm going to opt for networking. Networking can place an introvert between a rock and a hard place. They know that in order to achieve their professional goals, they have to form relationships with people who can hire, promote, and refer them, people who can help develop their reputation, people who can be gateways to opportunities. There's a catch, however. You see, many introverts cringe at the thought of networking. After all, what do you say to someone you know absolutely nothing about? Today, you're going to learn some skills that you can use to turn arduous networking conversations into comfortable relationship-building experiences. My name is Janet Parnes. I've been bringing my social conversation and relationship-building events to college students and professionals since 2012. My background lies in sales and public relations. I've worked for or consulted for companies that include semiconductor manufacturer Analog Devices and Panasonic. In my current role, I have presented to organizations such as engineering firms Simpson, Gumhurst, and Hager, Women in Technology International, and Bentley University Center for International Students and Scholars. I'm a graduate of the Protocol School of Washington, and my media appearances include NBC, NPR, and the Boston Globe. So I've been around the block a time or two. Let's talk about the core of relationship building. When people communicate, well, in any form, but particularly when it's a face-to-face conversation, there's an energy that reverberates, an energy that sparks creativity. When people are engaged in conversation, they ponder, they probe, they think outside of the box. They take ideas that have been generated and bring them into other relationships. As such, ideas grow and develop as people adapt them and adopt them. One idea spawns another. This is a process through which individuals grow and industries grow. Let's take a look at an example. In 1975, someone named Paul Allen read an article in Popular Mechanics magazine. It was about a new computer. He was intrigued, so he showed the article to his buddy, Bill Gates. The two decided to write software for this computer. Of course, that idea became Microsoft Corporation, a company that has sent an industry soaring and transformed the lives of people worldwide. This all began with a relationship. Now, Bill Gates is a self-declared introvert. However, he recognizes the value of the skills of extroverts. Take a look at this quote. You can see that Bill Gates understands that the skills of an extrovert complement those of an introvert. As he says, companies need both. Well, so do individuals. So today you're going to learn some of the skills that extroverts use to form relationships. But there's that word again. You may be thinking to yourself, form relationships. You might as well ask me to grow a 300-foot sequoia. I don't know what to do. The good news is this. You don't have to worry about growing the relationship. You simply have to fertilize the soil so the relationship can grow naturally. And today you will learn how to do that. Essentially, you're going to learn skills to make other people feel valued, understood, and heard. That is at the core of any relationship. So what happens when people feel valued, understood, and heard? They tend to like and trust you. And this is the benefit of that, at least professionally. You can see that I added the words hire and promote because they also apply to this situation. Think about it. Would you buy a car from someone you don't like? If you're looking for a financial planner, would you hire someone you don't trust? No. People want to do business with, people want to have relationships with those they know, like, and trust. You achieve this by making them feel valued, understood, and heard. You're going to learn how to make people feel valued, understood, and heard in these 5 different scenarios. The skills that you're going to learn are plucked from my program for teams and for individuals. It's a small piece of the pie. So let's get started. How do you start a conversation? Well, at least in our culture, many people, when they don't know what to say, they default to this. How are you? Now, the person may dutifully respond, fine, thank you. This, however, is the way that person likely feels. The universe of responses is so vast, it's hard for them to narrow down to one. When you speak to someone, you want to give them a launch pad for responding. This makes it easy for them to respond to you. It also makes the conversation easier for you, for they share the conversation. You don't have to come up with as much conversation. But what do you do if you can't ask someone, how are you? How do you start a conversation? Well, try small talk. Oh, I know some of you are probably rolling your eyes. Right, small talk. The weather, the traffic, real exciting. Well, small talk by design is unexciting. Small talk consists of light, easy to talk about topics. It's fluff stuff. The purpose of small talk is this: to put both parties at ease. It's a portal we walk through in order to engage in more meaningful conversation. The light topics of small talk allow you to establish common ground, thus putting everybody at ease. So what are some small talk topics? I like to use Norm. Today I'll address news and occupation. Come up with a generally known, non-controversial news story. Perhaps the Olympics. If you're speaking to someone in your industry, maybe there's an industry story you could share that they would know about. Occupation. People generally enjoy talking about their occupation, and they can do so easily, particularly if they like their job. So like many people, I used to ask, so what do you do? I asked that question until I made a decision never to ask that question again. This is the reason. I was conducting a networking skills seminar for a group of adults who had lost their vision. A man raised his hand. He said, I do network because I know I have to, but I'll tell you, I dread it, for I know what's going to happen. People are going to ask, so what do you do? And I'm going to have to respond, I used to be an engineer. However, I have lost my vision and I'm looking for a new career. I've told this story 100 times. However, every time I tell it, I feel my insides sink. So I said to him, what would you rather people ask? He said, I'd rather people say to me, what brings you here? That way I can say, I'm here to find out about different career paths, how people came to find their job, what they like about their job, what surprised them about their job. Then I can transition into my story. So from that moment on, I stopped asking, what do you do? And started asking, what brings you here? Think about it. This not only applies to a man in this gentleman's situation, but also to someone who is unemployed or underemployed, or someone who simply doesn't like their job. A colleague of mine once asked someone at a networking meeting, so what do you do? The response was this, nothing that would interest you. What do you say to that? So fertilize the soil to grow relationships by asking questions that make the other person comfortable. When people feel comfortable, they tend to feel valued. So say you're in a conversation, you're talking, the other person's talking, the conversation is flowing, and then it hits a sandbar. You are not of conversation, so does the other person. This is what generally ensues. You look at the person, they look at you. You try not to look at that person, they try not to look at you. Everybody wants to be beamed out of the situation. So what can you do? Here are a couple of options. One, you can go back to norm. Restart the conversation with a topic that is light and easy to talk about. Secondly, prevent the situation from happening in the first place. You do that by listening. Listen for subtopics when the person is speaking. Let's say, for example, you're talking to a marketing consultant. She mentions that her company sent her to work in Copenhagen for a year. Treat that as an arrow to put into your quiver. You can draw it out later on. So if the conversation dries up, you can ask, so tell me about your year in Copenhagen. What was the workplace culture like? How was the food? There are a zillion questions you can ask. This will help keep both of you at ease. It will also show her that you were paying attention. This brings up the subject of asking questions to keep a conversation going. What a great way to keep a conversation flowing. Ask questions about something the person said. Listen for topics that resonate with them and treat them as arrows to put into your quiver. You can draw on them to keep a conversation going, maintain a conversation. When we show an interest in someone, they feel interesting. And when people feel that they're interesting to us, they feel valued. When we ask questions, they feel understood and heard. So when you're networking, fertilize the soil so relationships can grow by questioning, by showing curiosity, by showing interest in the person and that which they're saying. They'll feel valued, understood, and heard. So far, we've talked about ways to start a conversation and how to restart a conversation that's hit a sandbar and keep a conversation going. These include verbal skills. However, people also hear our body language. In fact, studies have shown that when we speak to someone, they take almost as much from our facial expressions and gestures as they do from our words. As such, body language is a power tool that is often underused and misused. One of my favorite expressions is this: the torso turn. We instinctively direct our torso towards our point of interest. So let's take a look at this image. Where is this woman's point of interest? It's ahead of her somewhere. It may be the sidewalk, it may be the street. It certainly isn't the man she's talking to. He's a by the way. Compare that picture with this one. Although we don't know what these two men are saying, we can tell by their body language that they have some sort of relationship. We can tell that by their gestures and their facial expressions. We can also tell that by the position of their bodies. They're fully facing each other. When we direct our torso to someone, we're actually directing our entire body. So fully facing someone is akin to showing them your full attention. They feel they have your full attention. They feel valued, they feel understood, and they feel heard. When I think of making someone feel valued, understood, and heard through body language, a certain picture comes to mind. I saw it several years ago. It's a picture of a politician walking along a street. The street is lined with crowds on both sides. As she's walking, she has her hands extended and she's slapping the hands of people as she passes them by. She's looking straight ahead with a smile plastered on her face. I don't know who she's smiling at, for she isn't really looking at anybody in the crowd. When I think of behavior that is dismissive and arrogant, I think of that picture. So let's talk a little bit about the smile that's plastered on somebody's face. If you don't feel like smiling, don't. You know that you can often detect a fake smile. You have a sense of a smile that's real and one that's not. There's also a way of reading a person's face to determine whether a smile is sincere or not. Case in point, many years ago, in Hopkins, Massachusetts, there lived a man called Neil Entwistle. He was accused of murdering his wife and baby. At the trial, there was a picture shown of the wife and baby in a pool of blood. The defense attorney was speaking to the jury. He said, "Ladies and gentlemen, look at this picture and then look at the grimace on this man's face. You can feel his pain. It is palpable. How could he possibly have committed such a heinous crime?" Well, there's an FBI profiler in the audience watching this. She said, wait a minute. When people grimace, the skin along the sides of the eyes stays flat. When they smile, the skin wrinkles. His skin is wrinkled. He's not grimacing. He's smiling. He's reaping the reward of his action. Neil Entwistle was later convicted of murder. So you may not find yourself speaking with FBI profilers, but know that people can usually detect a smile that is not genuine. And when you smile without it being genuine, it erodes at trust. So you can fertilize the soil to grow relationships by fully facing someone when you speak to them, and by smiling when you feel like smiling. As an add-on, you might be asking, I want to fully face someone when I speak to them, but what about the situation in which I'm in a circle of people? There's someone to my left and there's someone to my right. Do I turn my back on the person to my left if I'm speaking to the person on my right? No, you don't do that. What you do is turn your head and partially turn your shoulders. So at least you indicate a desire to fully face the person. That way you're partially facing the person you're speaking with and you're not turning your back on somebody else. So far we've talked about actions that you can take that are positive. Let's talk a little bit about mistakes introverts tend to make at networking meetings. I'll address 3 of them. First of all, they may tend to gravitate to people and spend time with people they know. You walk into a networking meeting, you see 51 faces you don't recognize and 1 that you do. Of course, you may make a beeline for that person. It's natural. Most people would do that. And it's fine to do that if you want to catch up with somebody. However, remember, you're there to form relationships. So limit the time you spend with this person. One thing you can do is use this person to meet other people. You can say to the person, listen, I don't know anybody here. Can you introduce me to a couple of people? The 2 of you can work through them together. Once you meet new people and you've introduced yourselves, they can talk about your achievements and talents and you talk about theirs. It's much easier, isn't it, when someone else talks about our high points rather than us talking about them ourselves. Also, an introvert can spend too much time alone. Have you ever found yourself at a networking meeting and it seems that everybody but you has someone to speak with? I know I've been there. So don't stand there alone waiting for someone to rescue you. Try this. Find someone else who's alone. Rescue them. I tell you, they will be forever grateful. Also, you can approach the food table. People often go to the food table alone, maybe able to catch somebody there to speak with. Or you can approach a group. Find a group of 3 or more people and walk up to it. Try and catch somebody's eye. Undoubtedly, they will welcome you in. Now, you maybe think you're crashing a party, but actually you're doing the people in this group a favor, for they're there to form your relationships, as are you. And note I said, find a group of 3 or more people. When 2 people are in conversation, the conversation can tend to be intense. They may not welcome a third party. With 3 or more, the conversation tends to be light and very welcoming. So fertilize the soil for building relationships by stepping out of your comfort zone at a networking meeting and finding new people to speak with. Approach a group, try to make eye contact, and when you're welcomed in, join the group and introduce yourself. A year and a half ago, if someone said to you, are you free for coffee next week? Let's meet. You might find yourself at Starbucks. Now, when someone said, let's meet, you find yourself in front of a computer. For of course, virtual meetings have in large part replaced in-person meetings since the onset of COVID. Now, as far as building relationships is concerned, there are lots of commonalities between in-person and virtual meetings. However, when you're meeting virtually, there are certain considerations that are important to take into account. I'll talk about 3 of them today. Number 1 is space. When you're in a 12 by 20 conference room, you're a small entity in a large space. When you're meeting virtually, you take up a much greater amount of the space. If you're a thumbnail, you take up most of the space. As such, gestures become more pronounced and sometimes blatant. So, unless it's a lunchtime meeting where everybody's eating, have your lunch before or after the meeting. You see, no matter how careful you are, it is at the very least distracting to see someone open their mouth and insert food into it, and then chew. Number 2, be aware that the microphone on the computer picks up the loudest sound and the camera follows. Here's a case in point. I was at a virtual networking meeting. The speaker was soft-spoken. As she was talking to us, another participant found it necessary to blow her nose. So all of a sudden, my screen shifted, and this woman is blowing her nose in my face. So, moral of the story, if you have to blow your nose, cough, sneeze, or perform any bodily function that might be distracting or distasteful to others, mute yourself and go off camera. If the sneeze or cough is imminent and you don't have time to do both, mute yourself and duck. The point is, do whatever you have to do to be out of earshot and eyesight. Number 3, unless the circumstances are mitigating, turn on your camera. At a virtual meeting, it's difficult enough to develop that sense of cohesion and form relationships. This is impossible to do when people are looking at a still photo or a black box with a name written in it. There's a woman that I used to see at networking meetings. Well, I didn't see her actually. She was there, but she was the only indication of her being there was the black box with her name, and she did not speak. This woman happened to become a client of mine. She went through my 5-week program. All of a sudden, I found myself at net meetings with her, and she's on camera, and she's contributing. I said, what happened? She said, before, I didn't come on camera because I was afraid I'd be cornered. I'd be forced to comment or offer an opinion. I didn't know what to say. Now, I know what to say. I had the confidence to go on camera and to speak up. I was thrilled. So when you're meeting virtually, fertilize the soil to build relationships by being aware of the effects of your actions on others, and by going on camera so people can see and get a sense of who you are, what you like. So we've talked about starting a conversation, resurrecting a conversation that has hit a sandbar and keeping it going, using your body to send powerful messages that make others feel valued, understood, and heard, conducting yourself in a virtual meeting in a way that takes into account the comfort of others. These are all skills that are part of my 5-week program for teams and for individuals. If you'd like to learn more, here are some options for you. Feel free to download a PDF that I wrote about turning useless conversations into career and business builders, essentially relationship builders. When you download the document, you will then start receiving every other week a quick tip. This tip solves some common work-related dilemma. As I said, it's a quick tip, just a few sentences, a short paragraph. You could read it in less than a minute. And there's the URL there. I also invite you to sign up for a complimentary conversation with me. We'll spend 25 minutes talking about your situation or the situation of your team, your strengths, the impediments to reaching success, and we'll talk about some options for moving you forward. The options may involve me, they may not involve me. In any case, however, when you leave our conversation, you'll have some alternatives you can use to move closer to your goals. If you have any questions about anything I said today, feel free to email me. I'm happy to respond. If you'd like more information about me or my services, there's my website. So to wrap up, I know you had options for the way to spend this previous half hour, and I thank you for opting to come to my webinar. I hope you picked up some skills that you can use immediately to start forming relationships that will help you move forward in your business or career. I wish you all personal and professional success and happiness. Maybe we'll cross paths at a networking event. Thank you.
To learn more about our training programs, classes, and what sets us apart, please visit our website at www.computercoach.com.